All right, this is my favourite watches for April this year. Changed my workflow around slightly, so I'm weirdly getting this video out pretty much right at the end of the month. So don't get too used to that. But so yeah, here we go. Here's what I've watched that's really stood out to me. That was not released in 2026.
Where sweet Eliza builds her bower. Oh, blessed be each day and hour. Where sweet Eliza builds her bower. Eliza, Eliza, Eliza is the fairest queen that ever trod upon the green. There can be no doubt
I've been meaning to watch Orlando for ages, just because it seems like really kind of my cup of tea in terms of really time hopping, and there's a conceit to it about someone who just doesn't age that you've just got to go with, and is not really explained. And then so yeah, been on my watch list for ages, and I saw Goose Movies channel. He had the beautiful Curzon release of this in 4K, and he did a review of that, and so that sort of prompted me to watch it. I just watched this on streaming. I didn't have the disc, but yeah, kind of really sort of stood out to me. Kind of very contemporary, both in terms of it's not a historical artifact from its time. It very much feels like the present day, even though it's set in the past. Incredibly cinematic. There's loads of different scenarios. Like there's a bit where they're on the ice in Serbia, I think, and then they're kind of in the desert. So it really has a huge scope and scale to it. I think I maybe wish that those time frames were tied together a little bit more. There are these big time hops, and you sort of don't really get the feeling of what's happened in between. But but yeah, great. The other reason I really love this as well, Quentin Crisp, who I don't really know too much about, but Quentin Crisp is in this playing Queen Elizabeth, and I thought, oh, that was a genius bit of casting for this.
You want to know what's going to happen? Let's wait and see.
If anyone ever asks you what the connection is between the film critic Peter Bradshaw and Charlie XCX, you can tell them it's The Addiction by Abel Ferrara, because it's one of their favourite films. um, uh, yeah, I've not seen any Abel Ferrara before. I always thought he was kind of very kind of nihilistic, kind of almost slightly schlocky director. And then when I saw both Peter Bradshaw and Charlie XCX reference this as one of their favourite films, it kind of jumped onto my list to watch. And this is incredibly elegant, and it's beautifully shot in black and white. And it is in some ways I almost wanted it to be a little bit more schlocky. There's where this film really works for me. It's kind of well, it works visually. I think where it doesn't work for me is that the film has these long philosophical, people musings and about the nature of evil that just feels maybe a bit too theatrical and a bit too sort of like, oh, look at me, I'm an intellectual. But everything else about this is so great. It's really interesting. I mean, again, I've said it's beautifully shot. Um, the there is you get some really hallucinatory kind of images and sequences. The performances at time are really sort of out there and honest, and not what you'd expect from a vampire film. Um, it's obviously set in New York, kind of right before that time. Giuliani sort of really cleaned it up, so you've got a little bit of like edgy New York feeling there. Um, but yeah, it just kind of the plot really moves along, propulsive, quite interesting sort of sections to it around the relationship between the vampire and the person they change. Really liked this. Thought it was great. I first became aware of the offence maybe about 10 years ago. I heard Edgar Wright and Quentin Tarantino mention it, and individually, I loathe hearing the two of them talk. Find like they're insufferable to listen to, real annoying movie geeks. So together, it was like it was overload, and I couldn't deal with it. And they mentioned this, and it probably put me off. But then I think recently I heard that the offence was shot in Bracknell, which is a town quite close to where I live, and I go quite often. I just found it quite amusing. Sidney Lumet, the great New York filmmaker, and Sean Connery would have made a film there. That's what made me kind of want to give this a watch. And I'm not saying anything new about this. It is Sidney Lumet. You think he makes handsome films in terms of they're very classical and well made, but they don't push the boundaries too much. This is totally the opposite. It's not experimental by any means, but he really kind of uses style, and you get the feeling of someone who just doesn't really give a shit about the way things should be done. I just really love the style of this. There's a sequence in the middle which I've used as the clip where you get kind of Sean Connery's character's thoughts as he's kind of driving home about all these horrific cases he's had. It's beautifully cross-cut and energetic, and you get repeating images, and it's so swirling and chaotic. And but then there is an element you can see that this is based on a play, because the film gets to a certain point, while it's still definitely very cinematic, you get a series of almost like two-handed sort of plays within the film towards the end, which are kind of again really kind of nice mixed feeling to this that I really enjoyed it. I've wanted to watch this for a while, and I think what prompted me to watch it recently is I didn't realize Jean-Marie Volonté is the bad guy from those first couple of Fistful movies, so I didn't recognize him from this. So that's what prompted me to kind of finally watch this. I think I was expecting from this something a bit like Costa Gravas's Zed, where it would be very this kinetic, expansive view of kind of a political kind of institution or what's going on. What I wasn't preparing for is this is actually kind of a really sort of like perverted kind of view. Yeah, it's kind of really perverted in terms of this guy who's kind of committed a murder, and he's kind of got so power hungry that he just thinks he can leave clues that he did it without getting caught. And it's obviously a commentary on sort of how sort of people in positions of power need to be checked, because that can go out of control, and they can just do more and more extreme things because they're not questioned about it. Um, but yeah, there's some really kind of perverted sequences in it. Like the one that really stood out for me is he kind of murders this woman, and he kind of steals champagne for her from her apartment to then sort of take to his leaving drink celebration at work. And you think, oh, this is so grotty and nihilistic, and and I mean the style of it is great. It's maybe not as far out as I was thinking the style was going to be. Like I said, I was expecting something like Costa Gravas' Zed, which is very for its time frenetic and it's propulsive and energetic. This definitely has an energy to it, but it's not quite like that. I think maybe where this film I found it a little bit weak is you've got this subplot of almost kind of the police against these lefty hippies, and that sort of just felt I don't know, didn't feel as fully realised to me. Kind of I've sort of got the point about how it's maybe it is about authorities and people in power and how they need to be kept in check so that it doesn't kind of run wild. And the other thing to this is it's got a sort of a slightly absurdist element to it. Like there's this bit where he almost kind of goes up to someone to make them a witness to a crime, and he then crosses paths with them later on, and this person almost kind of is clearly the same guy, and this person is then pretending that it's not him, and it's almost like it is the kind of the reality of this world has slightly got warped and everything, and that's creates this absurdist flavor, and you get these kind of weird not dream sequence, but you got these flashed imagined sequences that again just amplified that feeling of kind of absurdity to this.